Hello, guys. Welcome to another exciting episode on the show, Control or Be Controlled. Podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And I remain your host, Darlington. Today's guest is Chris Donaldson, an adventurer, author, and lifelong motorcyclist whose story spans more than 4 decades and tens of thousands of miles on two wheels. At just 19 years old, Chris left behind the violence and uncertainty of 1970s Belfast, setting off on a Moto Guzzi with the dream of riding 10,000 miles to Australia. But when the Iranian Revolution closed his planned route, his journey transformed into an extraordinary 50,000-mile adventure across continents, becoming a powerful quest for identity, resilience, and self-discovery. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Nice to be here.
All right, so I have some questions here for you, and I would like us to get into them.
Great.
Okay, so what inspired the young man from Belfast to set off and ride around the world 42 years ago?
Well, that's an easy one. I mean, Belfast in the 70s was pretty unpleasant in a lot of ways. There was like a low-level civil war going on. There was bombs and bullets flying. We went to school in the middle of the city, and some days you'd look out through the windows and be columns of smoke around the place, like a war zone. So, yeah, I mean, the Irish have been populating the world for many hundreds of years. As you know, one country that people leave from more than come to. So I guess that when I was 17, 18, I decided to go to Australia to seek a better life, probably. So when I was 21, I left, finished college. I'd saved up some money and got on my motorbike to drive to Australia, to ride to Australia. The trouble was, it was 1979, and it was November, and I'd left, I got to London, and the Iranian Revolution started, so I pretty much blocked the road east. So I ended up going to the Middle East and then down through Africa, down to Cape Town. It was quite an unusual journey because I wasn't really going anywhere in particular. I just wanted to travel. Usually, if you're going on a journey, if you're traveling somewhere, there's always a destination. You're going there for a reason, to go somewhere, whereas I really wasn't. I was just traveling for the sake of traveling. So that was one of the first sort of unusual parts of my journey was. What part of Africa are you in?
I'm in South Africa.
South Africa. Yeah, I mean, I ended up in Cape Town in the middle of apartheid, so it was wasn't a lot of luck going on there. It was a bit unpleasant in many ways, but I managed to get a job in a yacht race coming back to Europe, and they flew my bag to. It was a shipping company who sponsored the race, so they flew it to the States. Picked it up in Los Angeles 3 months later, and rode up to Canada and then down to South America. So I covered just about everywhere in the world apart from Australia.
Okay, thank you so much, Chris. So, moving on. After all these years, what made you decide it was finally time to finish the journey to Australia?
Well, when I was traveling, I started writing a book, but then life got in the way. I just sort of gave it up and got into work, raising a family, and doing what everybody else does when they're trying to make a living. And then a few years ago, I sort of found a book with my notes and my diaries and decided we'd write a book about it. So it was interesting to be able to look back at the work I'd done when I was 21, 22, and look back from 40 years of experience and write a book about the journey with my experience of an older person, looking at what I was up to when I was younger. So it's been quite unusual, done unusually well. It's 1,500 reviews, 5-star reviews on Amazon. It's gone very well received. But whenever one of my friends in particular, read the book, he said, well, you never actually got to Australia, so why not have another go? So I thought, fair enough. I still have the same motorbike. It's Moto Guzzi Le Mans, which is not your normal touring bike. But I got the bike out of the garage and fixed her up, and we left just after COVID. Because I sort of still have work and family to look after, I would ride for 2 weeks, park the bike, and then go home for a couple of months, earn some more money, and then go back out again. So finally made it to Australia a couple of years ago, and the bike finally continued on to America, across America, and I finally got back actually just a couple of months ago with the bike from the States after leaving, going right around the world, finally.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris. So, your original trip was interrupted by the
Hello?
your original trip was interrupted by the Iranian Revolution. How did that unexpected detour shape the adventure and perhaps even your life?
Well, it's funny the way something can happen in the world, totally unrelated to you, but it's the offshoot of it was a complete change of direction because after getting to Australia last year, I know what if I'd made it when I was 21, 22 in my youth, I would probably have stayed. I'd be talking to you now with an Australian accent instead of an Irish accent because it would have been, there's plenty of work, there's plenty of money about Australia. You know, it's the sort of place I would have stayed, I'm sure. So what happened in Iran, thousands of miles away, changed the direction of my life quite completely. And it just shows how Iran, funny enough, was one of the most interesting places to be because it's sort of closed off for many years. But the people were very friendly, very hospitable, very nice people. And it's just a shame that the West now has decided that they're having a war with them because it's one of the most friendly countries I've ever traveled.
Okay, thank you so much, Chris. So, you compare your journey to the Aboriginal walkabout, a rite of passage. In what ways did your travels become your own journey into adulthood?
Well, as you say, yes, it was a sort of coming of age story because I was 21 going out with my motorcycle to discover the world, which I did quite well, an awful lot of it. Um, and one of the things when you're young, when you're 20, in your 20s, you're learning things, you know, you're seeing things haven't seen before, and everything's fresh and new. Whereas when I was six-headed off a few years ago, I was in my 60s, you know, you've seen most things. You've world weary in some ways. There's not so many new things out there. You know, if I don't know about it, I can soon find out because with the internet age, nothing is untraceable. You know, you can find out everything that's going on just by going online. So it's a very different experience in my 60s, but just as important because in a different way, when you're in your 60s, you're looking at retirement, giving up work, and hopefully having enough money to keep you going until your time is called. You know, so it was interesting to compare the two types of travel on the same motorcycle, the same journey, and as much as I was going to Australia, I finally made it this time. But it's fascinating. It's just as important an age in your 60s because when you're in your 20s, you're turning from education, being a kid, into adulthood, bringing up a family and working for a living. I'm at the end of that story now, giving up the family has sort of grown up and left. The work is slowing up. Hopefully, you will have enough money to keep me going. So it's a very different stage of life, but even more important because it should be a great time. You know, I think a lot of people miss out on their retirement because they don't plan what they're going to do. It's nearly like a shock. They get up, they go to work on Friday for the last time and wake up Monday morning with nothing to do with themselves and no motivation to do anything. It's quite a dangerous time as well because a lot of men, especially, it's such a shock to their body, to their physical and their mental needs that they only last a couple of years and something happens, they have a heart attack or breakdown, whatever. But people just don't cope with not having anything to do anymore.
All right, Chris, thank you so much. So, the world has changed dramatically over the past 4 decades. How is today's adventure different from the one you experienced in the early 1980s?
Well, apart from the fact that I can't party as well as I could have done in those days. In those days, I would have ridden for 500 miles and stopped somewhere, gone to a bar and had a good time, met people. Whereas now I do 200 miles and I'm just all ready for is a cup of tea and something to eat and off to bed, you know. But Probably the biggest difference apart from that is probably the internet has made such a difference to everything in life. Your mobile phone now, it's not just a phone, it's a computer, it's a diary, it's a camera. It's all the things that a mobile can do. I think I read somewhere it's replaced sort of 35 or 40 different, things like alarm clock, watch, phone, computer, all the things it does. And all the information that you need to know about anything in the world is on your fingertips now. Um, 40 years ago, I made a telephone call from Egypt, I think it was, and it cost about for the equivalent of about $50 to make a 5-minute phone call. Whereas now with WhatsApp and Messenger, you can phone home for nothing. Everything's it's free. All the information about the next town is just need to Google it. And of course, ChatGPT tells you everything else that you more than you ever want to know. But the information age, you never get lost. You never don't know what's going on. I was going from one country to the next, not knowing what the political situation, how dangerous it would be, or anything else. But so really, the internet has made a huge difference to so many things in our lives.
Okay, thank you so much, Chris. So you often see that adventure before dementia. What does that phrase mean to you personally?
Well, it's a bit of a cheeky sort of weird way of saying just because you're old and your faculties are starting to go, doesn't mean you should stop looking for adventure. Think of adventures, usually think of younger people going off and having a good time and finding out what adventure is, whatever adventure actually is. Adventure is generally looked upon as doing something different, doing something difficult, perhaps dangerous, and something that you could look back at a later time thinking, well, that was a bit crazy. So you tend to think of younger people doing that, but older people, you should be able to still do that, because you still got your faculties, and even if you haven't got everything working as it should, you can still get out there and have a good time and look for not dangers, but look a little bit further than the health and safety of sort of third world or the first world has. That you still out there have a good time and do some risky things and enjoy yourself. Whereas most, as I said, an awful lot of men, especially when they retire, they don't know what to do with themselves. Their work has been their be all and end all. So I guess I wanted to show people that it's because you're in your 60s, doesn't mean you can't do what you were doing with what you would have done in your 20s. You maybe just don't do it as fast or as long and have to change a few things about it, but you can still get out there and have a good time.
All right. So, on the lighter side, what's the funniest moment you have experienced on the road?
Funniest, God, there wasn't that so much funny things as dangerous, dodgy things. But yeah, I mean, every day was something funny going on. This was a funny peculiar is I went to Israel 40 years ago and I couldn't get across the border into Jordan to travel on, so I had to get the boat back out again. And this year I went to Israel and I couldn't get across the road to Jordan again. It was a bit of a deja vu situation. So some things were very similar to before, even though you've more experience and more idea what's going on. Things can still take you unawares. Um, One of the surprising things that was happened was when I got to Cape Town, I got a job in a yacht race because one of the crew had injured himself. Turned out that the guy was from Belfast. So actually, he lived, even though I just met him in Cape Town, his parents lived about 2 blocks away from my parents did in Belfast. So when I got home, I looked him up and we became friends. And he worked for my company, for my dad's company, for a few months and kept in touch that way.
Okay, so for someone who's been putting off a dream for years, what would you say to encourage them to finally take that first step?
Well, taking that first step is the hardest thing to do sometimes because once you've taken the first step, once you've got momentum behind you, it's easier to keep going. But the hardest thing sometimes is making the first move to go. I suppose probably the easiest way to look at it sometimes if you go to the gym, you think, oh, I should go to the gym and get some exercise, but I don't want to. But actually, once you get there, it's not too bad. I think in the same way, making a journey in a difficult countries and not knowing what's going to happen. The hardest thing is actually getting off your ass and doing it. And what I always say is don't think about it, just do it. And life will happen. And if it's dangerous or hardships, you'll survive one way or the other. And sometimes actually it's the most difficult things that happen with a journey or something in work or in your life. It's whenever there's danger or difficulty that you remember the thing. If life is too easy, there's nothing to talk about. People are programmed for difficulties. I think we expect things to be too easy and life to be too easy,
All right, Chris, thank you for taking us along on this incredible journey. The story is about much more than motorcycles or miles traveled. It's about courage, curiosity, resilience, and the realization that it's never too late to chase a dream you left unfinished. Whether someone dreams of crossing continents or simply taking the first step towards a different life, journey reminds us that adventure has no expiration date. So, for those who would like to learn more, probably want to go on this journey and they need some encouragement from you, want to speak to you and connect with you, how can they do that?
Well, the best way is through Amazon. My books, Going the Wrong Way and Adventure Before Dementia, will be out soon. But Going the Wrong Way is the best-selling and travel book. So probably the best way to get in touch is get the book, and then you'll see all my contact details on it. I'm on Facebook. I've got my website's Chris Donaldson World. So yeah, anybody wants some advice on what to do, give me a call. But the best thing is probably to buy the book. And it is amazing technology. We talk about the internet, but the fact that somebody in Belfast or South Africa can write a book, put it online, and have it available all over the world, this is quite amazing, really, isn't it?
Definitely. All right, Chris, thank you so much for coming today. I also want to thank all my listeners for taking out their time to tune in today on another episode of Control or Be Control. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who's been waiting for the right time to pursue their dream. Once again, Chris, thank you so much for coming to my show.
Been a pleasure. Nice talking to you. Good
And do
luck.
have and do have a wonderful day ahead. Also, to all my listeners as well, thank you all so much, and see you again next time on Control or Be Control. Bye, guys.
Oh,
Thank you, Chris.
bye.
All right.
Cheers.